Good morning, everybody. Today we're going to learn about relative clauses. Relative clauses is when we're going to take two different sentences and combine them into a single sentence. This single sentence will be far more informative, will be more insightful, it'll be more elegant, and just provide a lot more information. Use an analogy. Imagine we have a hamburger and we have French fries. When they're separate, not so interesting. But when we put them together in a single meal, it's far more tasty and far more delicious to eat. Another crazy example, we have vanilla and we have chocolate chips. When they're separate, very dull, not very interesting. But once we combine them together, it becomes something really delicious, something that we actually would enjoy. So we're going to use the same concept here, but with language. We're going to take two different sentences and combine them together into one single sentence that's far more informative, far more insightful, far more elegant, far more complex. And that's what this whole topic is about, called relative clauses. Let me give you a couple of examples to show what I'm talking about. First example, here's a sentence. Belle challenged Queen Elsa to a chess match. Second sentence, Belle learned how to play many games from the Beast. I can take both these sentences to create one single sentence that reads, Belle, who learned how to play many games from the Beast, challenged Queen Elsa to a chess match. This one simple sentence is far more informative than the two separate sentences by themselves. Another example, Hong Kong is where many pigs fly. Hong Kong was ranked #1 in the world for imagination. I can combine these two sentences together to read Hong Kong, which was ranked #1 in the world for imagination, is where many pigs fly. This one combined sentence is far more elegant, far more complex, and just a lot more interesting to read. So we're going to do that, and we're going to use three rules. Now, I put these rules on the slide here, and it may seem fairly abstract, and you may not really know what's going on. So just bear this in mind. We're going to go through exercises, but use these rules to create our combined sentence. And hopefully these rules will become clear after we do that. So first exercise. Here's the question. Combine 1 and 2 together into a single sentence or question. Use the second sentence as the relative clause. And I've circled the second sentence here. What this means is that the second sentence has to come after the connector. Now, what does that mean? I will show you what that means. So I've already started this. Oops, there's an error here. Let's move this here. I'll show you what I mean in just a second. I'm circling these two, because if you look at the rules, let's look at the rules, right? First rule, identify the common object in both sentences. So if we look at this, the common object in both sentences is that girl went to primary school with me. She has now become a superhero. The girl and she is the common object in both sentences, and that's why I've circled it. And so now we're going to combine the two sentences together. We have to first of all identify which clause, which connector to use. How are we going to connect these two sentences together? We need a connector. We need a word that connects these two together. And examples of connectors are things like who, that, which, why, where, when. These two words will combine the two sentences together. I call it the connector. It's actually the relative clause. And notice this very important rule here. The connector comes after the common object. So if we go to our sentence here, we start writing the first sentence, that girl, and we get to the object. Okay, so we're at the object now, that girl, and the rule says the connector comes after the common object. Now in this case, the connector to use for girl and he, you should realize, should be who refers to a person. So I'm going to put who. The girl who. Let's make that bigger. Let's get rid of the comma. The girl who. So I've followed the second rule. The connector comes after the common object, and I'm going to use who because I'm talking about a person. And now I'm going to link the two sentences together with the second sentence coming after the connector. The second sentence coming after the connector. I've already put the connector in. Here is the connector. Who is the relative clause? Let's just make it clear which one is the relative clause. And now I'm going to follow the rules, which says the second sentence comes after the connector. So that girl who, and just literally copy what the second says. Oops, let's get rid of that. Second sentence, who has now become a superhero. Let's put commas in to separate these different descriptions. So that girl who has now become a superhero. Notice I just simply copy in what the second sentence is. And then I've got to go back and finish the information from my first sentence. I still have to include all of this stuff into my description and just copy it and went to primary school with me. So the common object, again, let's go through the instructions. Number 1, identify the common object. I did that. It's girl, she. The girl and she are the common object in both sentences. So I start by writing that girl. Just copy out the first part of the first sentence. Second rule, identify which clause, the connector. And I'm saying it's who because I'm talking about a person. That girl, she, I'm going to use who. And it comes after the common object. So I put the connector straight after that girl. And then finally, the third rule is link the two sentences together with the second sentence coming after the connector. The second sentence coming after the connector. The second sentence has now become a superhero. So that girl who has now become a superhero went to primary school with me. And I'm done. That's it. Sound easy? Sound very complicated? Let's look at another one. Here's another one. Combine 1 and 2 together into a single sentence question. Use the second sentence as the relative clause. So here are my two sentences. Ronald McDonald is the manager of a large company named Hungry Caterpillar. Second sentence, Hungry Caterpillar sells Big Macs. So if I go to my rules, first rule, identify the common object in both sentences. So I think it's quite clear here that the thing that is common to both sentences is Hungry Caterpillar. Hungry Caterpillar is an object here. Hungry Caterpillar is an object here. So, now the key thing here is, let's start writing out this. Let me make the font bigger, 35. So, I start writing out, the first sentence is, the manager of a large company named Hungry Caterpillar. It's going way off screen. Let's bring it back. Boom. Ronald McDonald is the manager of a large company named Hungry Caterpillar. Here is my common object. Hungry Caterpillar. I can circle Hungry Caterpillar here. My common object. So I write out the sentence, the first sentence, until I get to the common object. I write it out, and this I get to the common object. Let's go back to my rules. Identify which clause, i.e. the connector, comes after the common object. So what is my connector here? Well, it's a company. Hungry Caterpillar is the name of a company. So I'm going to use which. I'm not going to use who. Who is for a person. I'm going to use which for a company, for an organization. And it comes after the common object. So, name Hungry Caterpillar, which. It comes after the common object. My common object is Hungry Caterpillar. I put the connector immediately after the common object. And then the final rule, link the two sentences together with the second sentence coming after the connector. So, which sells Big Macs. Full stop. And so the second sentence, sells Big Macs, comes immediately after the connector, which in this case is which. And I'm done. I've combined my two sentences together. Let's look at one final example. Lionel Messi owns 9 footballs. He loves kicking them. Now this is a little bit harder, but we're going to use exactly the same principles to answer this question. Let's first of all get the answer box ready. Now I'm going to say that the common object in both sentences, now I could say it's Lionel Messi, but if you were to try combining it with Lionel Messi, it's going to sound very awkward. You're going to have something along the lines that says Lionel Messi who plays with them. Notice how in the second sentence there is no name, there's no object, it's just a pronoun here. So it's actually very awkward to use Lionel Messi as the common object. Much more sense to use the footballs and them. Footballs in the first sentence, so you actually have the name of the object here. So I'm going to use footballs. Now you can do it with Lionel Messi, but it becomes a bit hard. I think if you use footballs, it's a lot easier. Let me show you why. Identify the common object in both sentences, so I'm going to use footballs. So let's, first of all, create our sentence. Lionel Messi owns 9 footballs. Here's my common object. Here's my common object. Lionel Messi owns 9 footballs, he plays with them. And then, so I write out the first sentence till I get to the object. Lionel Messi owns 9 footballs. Footballs are an object, and I'm going to use my connector is which. I'm going to use my connector which is which. Identify which clause the connector comes after the common object. Connector in this case is which, football, comes after the common object. So I put my sentence, Lionel Messi owns 9 footballs. 9 footballs is the common object. So Lionel Messi owns 9 footballs, which, and then add my second sentence in which he plays with. Which he plays with. Notice how I don't put the word them in. That would be wrong. I don't need to put them in because it's already there. If I put them in, then I'm repeating the footballs. But the whole point of combining these two sentences together is to make it much more simpler and elegant. By putting them in, I'm saying footballs twice, and it is grammatically incorrect. I only need to say it once. Lionel Messi owns 9 footballs, which he plays with. Full stop, end of story. I've got my connector in. My second sentence comes after the connector, and I am finished. I have one more example here, which I will do very quickly down here, because it's a different connector that we haven't used yet. Let me just shrink that. So I go in here, type it in. You will notice that the common object here is the date, 2018. So I'm going to say I visited Mars in 2018. That's my common object. And I'm going to use a connector for time, and date will be when I planted a tree there. So I visited Mars in 2018. In 2018, I planted a tree there. 2018 is the common object. So the best connector for the common object is when. Specific time period, you use when. So I visited Mars in 2018 when, and then you copy in the second sentence after the common clause. I planted a tree there. Right, so your assignment will be in the Google Classroom. Please try that. Try your best. Fill in the answers, and then I will review them, and then I'll come back to you with common mistakes and try to then take you to the next stage.